If no problem, I think we can first briefly introduce the seminar and the journal, and after that, we will welcome Professor Jian Zuo to share his research. So good day, everyone. I'm Yan Taoyu from the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, and I'm also one of the editorial board member of JBDE. So it's truly a pleasure to welcome all of you to the Frontier Forum of JBDE. So our Frontier Forum series was launched to create a dynamic platform for scholars to share pioneer research, explore emerging technology, and also engage in meaningful conversation like this. And if you'd like to know more about our journal, about JBDE, so please visit our official website. You can find it later. And today we are truly honored to welcome Professor Jian Zuo, a renowned expert in sustainable building environment. So his main research interest is to achieve sustainable built environment through stakeholder engagement. So before introducing our distinguished speaker, I'd like to first take this opportunity to briefly introduce our journal. So as you can see, our journal was founded in 2023, a young one. As an international Gold Open Access journal, we provide a high-quality platform for researchers worldwide. And to ensure academic excellence, our journal actually follows a rigorous single-blind peer review process and publish 3 issues per year. A great news is that as part of commitment to supporting researchers, our journal will waive all article processing charges for accepted papers until 2029. It allows scholars to publish their work free of charge. And we have a target impact factor of 5. Our journal aims to establish itself as a high-impact academic platform in the fields of building design, environmental sustainability, and also urban development. So at the bottom of the page, you will find 4 QR codes. So let me change laser point. Yeah. So the first one, it allows you to directly contact the editorial team for any queries. And the second one is the official WeChat account of the journal, so where we will share updates on conferences and published articles. And the third one is our linking by page. And the fourth one, we welcome the scholar to exchange group of the journal, where scholars can stay informed about latest research and academic discussion. So we encourage you to engage with the journal and follow the updates of our JBDE. Yes, and after that, I'd like to introduce our distinguished editorial leadership team. So first of all, we have honorary editor-in-chief of the journal, Professor Jian Kang from UCL, UK. He's a globally recognized expert in architectural acoustics and also the built environment. And his leadership is an important role in shaping the academic vision of the journal. And also we have 2 editors-in-chief. They are Professor Li Maozhang from Huazhong University of Science and Technology, and also Professor Xiangyu Wang from East China Jiao Tong University. And also we have Dr. Junbo Sun as our executive chief editor of the journal. And our editorial team of the journal is committed to upholding the highest standards of academic quality and relevance, ensuring that the journal continues to reflect the latest advancements in building design and environmental research. And we welcome scholars worldwide to engage with the journal, submit their research, and contribute to advancing knowledge in these critical fields. And to ensure the highest academic standards, we are also supported by a global editorial board. And currently, we have 52 scholars from 40 different countries and regions. So they are shown here on slides. And also, we will continuously expand the editorial team and invite outstanding scholars to join in shaping the future of building design and urban planning. And in addition to regular issues, we also actively organize special issues on emerging topics. So these special issues provide a platform for researchers to explore specific areas in a greater depth. So the following showcase the latest special issue of the journal, and also we welcome interested scholars to submit their manuscript for these special issues, and also assure that there will be no article processing charges for the submission, and you can find more information at the special issue pages. Yeah, and one more advertisement is a special issue led by myself. So we have 3 guest editors, me, Professor Maxwell Edwin Alfrey, from UK and also Professor Xiaobo from USA. So the topic is health and safety management in construction, innovations and changes. So we now have successfully published two high quality papers. One is from Li Xingmin's team, the other one is from Xiaobo's team. We are continuously accepting new papers. So please, you're really welcome to submit your paper if you're interested in the topic. Yes. And finally, we also want to briefly introduce SCP, which is the co-organizer of our seminar series. And SCP, it is actually founded by 10 leading academicians, including Professor Xiangyu Wang, also one of our editor-in-chief. It focuses on advancing smart construction and manufacturing technologies. And it is actually originated from the Australian Advanced Technology Research and Innovation Alliance. And SCP now has become a key global platform for research, innovation, and industry collaboration. So we are truly honored to have SCP as our co-organizer. So about our brief introduction to the journal and to our series forum. So now let's move on to a brief introduction. A warm welcome to today's speaker, Professor Jian Zuo. And Professor Jian Zuo is a leading scholar in sustainable construction at the University of Adelaide. And his research focuses on health and sustainable built environments through both technical approaches and policy and also behavioral interventions. He has led or contributed to a major Australian research projects funded by the ARC and other national programs. And also, Professor Zuo has long worked on ecological towns, green buildings, and construction sustainability. He has published over 100 papers and with more than 31,000 citations on Google Scholar, and also very impressive high index of 95. And 12 of the papers are ranked as ESI hot or highly cited papers. So now we're truly honored to have Professor Zuo with us today. So let's warmly welcome him. So Professor Zuo, I will stop sharing now. So you may start sharing your screen. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Professor Yu, for your very kind introduction.
Yeah, thank you. So you may start sharing your screen.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen now.
Okay, great. Cool. Okay, so sorry. So thank you again, Professor Yu, for your very kind introduction, and it's really my great honor to join this event and seminar co-organized by Journal of Building Design and Environment and SCP. Actually, a few weeks ago, I've been introducing one of our speakers, Professor Xiangyu Wang, and he delivered a very excellent presentation about the digital future of construction. So today, I'd like to provide a brief report about some of my group's works around the sustainability and in particular the solar waste management. Well, I'm from the School of Architecture and Civil Engineering, University of Adelaide, and we are actually in the process of merging with another university called University of South Australia. So in 2026, 1st of January 2026, the new university will be formed, and the name of the new university is called Adelaide University. So next year, if we have a chance to meet again, I'm probably going to see the new brand of the university. Okay, so I guess I probably don't have to talk too much about the necessity of looking at the solid waste management. And clearly, it has been well established the significant impacts of the solid waste on the environmental issues. These probably can cite so many issues such as the land occupation of the land, but also the emissions and the pollution to the land. So which means we need to probably restore it, the land, and even for the expected worth from the soil from the metro construction works, they could be considered as contaminated soil, which needs to be treated before can be sent to the clean field. Um, but I'd like to provide a little bit background of the Australian context, as this presentation will be around Australian context. So use the Australia as a case study. We have a national waste report every 2 years. So the recent report was published late last year, providing the official statistics of the waste generated nationwide. So I like to use some of this as the background of the waste in general in Australia. In 2022 to 2023, the whole country has generated around 76 million tons of waste. You're probably going to argue that's not too much, and considering there's only probably 30, 35 million people population. But if we look at the distribution of this waste, a large proportion goes to building and demolition waste. A large proportion goes to organics and also pretty much on ash. And the hazardous waste takes quite a big percentage as well. But more interestingly, or more, we need to be more concerned is about the waste generation per capita. So it's about 2.9 tons per capita. That's going up from the previous years. And bear that in mind that Australia has been introducing a lot of policies, which I will talk about it a bit later. Yet the waste generation per capita still increases. So that's really deserves attention and more efforts. So if we look at the source of the waste generation, sorry, if we look at the source of the generation, we just mentioned that 39% goes to C&D waste, 30% goes to commercial and industrial, and it's around 14% goes to electricity generation. So C&D waste does dominate the the waste mix, so which deserve a lot of attention. But I will talk about a bit later about the growing concern, not necessarily just C&D waste. Sure. Okay, then we'll look at the resource recovery rate. So this is a term not necessarily used widely in other contexts, but in Australia we use the resource recovery rate, which includes not just recycling, but also reuse and energy recovery. Or in other contexts, you may come across the term called diversion rate. So anything we do not send to the landfill, we can call it being diverted from the landfill. So then we can use it to calculate the diversion rate. So as you can see, the every state is quite different. Even overall resource recovery rate is about 66% nationwide. Some states are performing much better than other states. So as South Australia, the state which I come from, already have the recovery rate about 82%. While other states such as Northern Territory and Queensland is about 34% and 47%, which deserves also the attention. There's that the potential the policies could make some difference in terms of the effectiveness of the recycling or recovery practices. And this is one of the case studies what I'm going to talk about a little bit later. So as you can see, the building and the demolition materials or C&D waste already got 84% of the recovery rate. But it's worthwhile looking at the textile, as even though the waste generation in terms of the weight is not a lot, which is less than 1 million tons, but considering textiles are lightweight, it's actually very volume demanding. So actually textile still presents one of the biggest concern or challenges in Australia in terms of recycling and recovery. Organics is another interesting story as many of Australian households have their own backyards. Normally, they grow vegetables and fruits. So it's relatively easier because they have a big market to follow up. So there's a relatively mature supply chain to take up these type of waste streams. So if you can see this, this is the flow of the waste in Australia. In Australia, we generally speaking, we divide all the waste streams into three. So municipal solid waste, commercial and industrial waste, and construction demolition waste. For different type of waste streams, they normally went through different type of uh, treatment. For example, the municipal solid waste we have introduced the container deposit systems, like when you have finished a can of Coke or carton of milk, you can put into your rubbish bin and connect them, and you can send to the depot. Yeah, and then you'll be rewarded for 10 cents per can or carton you put in. So the idea is that, but this can be connectively sorted and can be sent to the remanufacturer later on. For construction demolition waste, even these type of waste have a very high recycling rate, about 85%. Majority of them was sent to road base, which is relatively low value added as the cost of getting the rubble is very low. Well, in the future or at the moment, we also have seen some of the crossover between municipal solid waste and the construction waste, as we have seen some of the practices trying to incorporate the waste into the concrete and asphalt. For example, we have some local businesses have designed a very novel asphalt hot mix, being able to take the soft plastics and the printer cartridge into the asphalt hot mix, which is quite helpful to deal with this very problematic waste stream. But this is generally speaking what it looks like. As you can see, it's very heavily CND oriented, as it's confirmed forms a very large percent of the waste, total waste being generated in Australia. So you probably have already come across the waste hierarchy framework. We probably have seen some different frameworks such as reuse, recycle, disposal, etc. This is a little bit different as we can see. We're trying to break it down to more specific segment of the entire supply chain. As you can see, generally speaking, we still try to avoid or reduce the generation of the waste. But then if we can't, then we try to reuse it as much as possible before we send it to the recycling or even disposal. So there are some recently there's some initiatives by both the federal and the state government in terms of encouraging the manufacturers and also the end users to rather than just say, for example, you have you have iPhone, used for 3 years, technically, you can say, oh, well, I've used it for 3 years. I want to replace with a new model. But the new policy is that the business, like the Apple, has to present the option to the end user, saying, oh, okay, you have used it for 3 years. It probably not as fast as what it used to be, but we can repair it for you for a certain amount of money. And then, it's up to the end users whether he or she want to replace or she want to just, repair and reuse. So there are a lot of government actions, and I will have more details about the policies a bit later. But it's generally speaking, all the levels of the governments, including the Commonwealth, state and territory, and then the local councils, they all have certain policies in place, and in particular to prevent the waste generation. And then if it can't be prevented, we try to reuse and recycle it to prevent the materials to go to out of the ecosystem. So which means we can use it again and again and again. So, at the national level, there are some initiatives such as the Ministerial Advisory Group to propose the upstream indicators for of circularity. So it's not just the waste recycling, but all about how to make sure it's going to circulate and stay in the system. And then there's environmentally sustainable procurement policy and reporting framework, which has specified the particular public procurement strategies in terms of, for example, in Victoria state, there's the government state mandate that all the public projects have to use recycled contents or products as long as it's available. So if you don't want to use it, you have to demonstrate, you have to justify why you can't use these recycled products or the products with the recycled contents. And there are also the actions being placed by research centers to deal with more problematic waste streams such as plastic, etc. And food, like organic waste, has also been receiving a lot of attention, and a lot of funding has been allocated to deal with that type of waste. The other critical aspect which deserves attention is what we call product stewardship. And what does that mean? Product stewardship means, whoever manufactures the product should bear the responsibility of being taking the more proactive role to eliminating or reducing the impacts of these products, particularly when these products reach the end of life. So there are product stewardship programs available talking about the manufacturers can take these back when they reach the end of life, and they can be recycled, and then the materials being recycled, recovered, can be put into the remanufacturing process. So there are a few of stewardship programs looking at the clothing as a textile, what I just mentioned, is very topical, very taking a lot of attention at the moment. Packaging is another one where there have been a lot of debate about whether there'll be too much packaging, whether it's better just reduce the packaging. But then the counterpart argument is whether it will pose the health threats, because it's most likely related to the food. So we have seen some of the debates around packaging, for example, the frozen food, which we have seen with the paper packaging, and then we start introducing the recycled packaging. So like the paper or the paper board has been used the recycling contents, which means it may not necessarily to reach the food grade. As a result, some businesses have then introduced in another layer of packaging, the plastic packaging, which is the quality, the food grade. So there are a lot of debates, and probably I guess more systematic approach will have to be taken. Otherwise, we may end up with have more packaging waste as a result. So states and territories, every state have their own legislation, policies, regulations, strategies, and in particular, most of the states and territories have the landfill levies, though, so that this can be charged and then can be used to fund the establishing the recycling capacity, etc. So I'll just give a very quick snapshot of what the all the major state governments policies. For example, New South Wales has a major levy around $160 per ton in metropolitan areas, whereas in the regional areas about $94. Whereas in other states like Queensland is much lower. In fact, 2 years ago, they even don't have the landfill levy. So we actually have seen, the recycling rate was actually very low over there because of that. So I won't go through all of this, but as you can see, they're all quite different. In South Australia, we have a quite high levy, like $156 per ton in metropolitan areas and only $78 in non-metropolitan areas. And the strategies, look at the strategies, please. Like, and all these strategies, the targets have been pretty much been met, in terms of CND waste. It's already at 90% a couple of years ago. So this is a target very ambitious, but already been pretty much been met. Whereas you can see in other states, this figure is a bit lower. Okay, so I think I've done enough of the background, introduction of the background. So I'd like to use two case studies in next probably 20 minutes to go through some of the studies my group has done in last few years, especially looking at the impacts of the solid management policies. So the first case study is around the assessing the effectiveness of the solid management policies. So as I have introduced the background, so there are certain role that can be played by the policies in terms of solid waste management. We can encourage the recycling. We can encourage, we can get more resources be recovered, and then we can reduce the waste to be sent to the landfill, and then we can also reduce illegal dumping. So even as I mentioned in the introduction of the background, Australia has introduced a series of policies. However, Australia still generates a quite significant amount of solid waste each year. In fact, the waste generation per capita is actually growing. And the recycling rates varies quite significantly from one state to the other. And more importantly, we don't know whether or not these policies are effective or not. And if we don't know how we can provide the feedback to the further design and improvement of these policies. And because we only have 7 states and territories, so there are not many samples available, and because many of the data only available every 2 years, so the sample is quite small. So, so this research is specifically talking about by selecting a right model to really to find out whether the solid management policy is effective or not, as a result to strengthen the recycling practices. So if you look at all the waste management policies in Australia, there are generally speaking 6 of them. So these landfill bans, like, they will have direct impact of the recycling rate that we can't send to the landfill at all. This includes some of the hazardous waste, such as the solar panels, for example. And then there was internal hazardous waste tracking. So it can effectively increase the recovery rate. Basically, for those hazardous waste, start from being put on the truck all the way to the destination to recycle and to treat these waste will be tracked. The next one is land levy, which I just mentioned. And then there will be strategic targets, household chemical connections, and single-use shopping bag ban, which has been introduced in South Australia and also in other states recently. So in this study, we only look at 2 of them, so landfill bans and the internal hazardous waste tracking. We potentially can look at landfill levy, but because it varies quite differently, so in this study, we choose not to include it. So if you look at the policies and study area, we look at all the states and territories. So they are not 7 states. So they are 7 states, but they are also 2 territories. So we have non-jurisdictions. And then we also selected 3 cities, Sydney, Melbourne, and Adelaide, into the sample. And you can have a look on this table in terms of the landfill bans being introduced and also when the internal hazardous waste tracking be introduced. So in this study, we look at the specific method called repeat measure analysis of variance to measure line independence between samples and to make statistics on variation among individuals. So, this method is very useful for very small sample. So it does not really require a big sample and has been used in the biomedical research quite a lot. So we choose this method in this study. So technically, if you look at how we measure this effectively, so for example, when we examine the policy effects, so if it is very simple, like it's a new policy and on different areas, so we can use one area as a control group, another one as an experiment group, and you look at the same time. And by looking at this, we can simply say, oh, new policy has improved because A and B. So in area B, the policy result is better. But not all the studies can find a control group. And what if we only have one area's data available? So we can look at the time, like time A and time B. So we then look at what's the policy result in different time period, and then again we can measure the effectiveness of the new policy. And then we may have multiple policies. Again, it's going to be a little bit more complicated. Like, we also need to measure, we not just measure the variance according to time period. Also, we need to measure the variance according to the different policies. So, this is going to be this is a repeated measures of analysis of the variance. So this is the formula. So basically, we provide inputs of the Australian recycling data to the repeated ANOVA, and then we look at the Australian's recycling rate, whether the recycling rate has increased significantly nationwide. So this is basically we try to validate the effectiveness of the national policy. And then we look at the different regions' recycling data to see if the recycling rates vary according to the region. So we basically validate the effectiveness of different policies. And then we use the repeated ANOVA to separate out the effective policy by just separating other impacts, just whether this recycling rate as the measure of the effectiveness of policy is because of the introduction of this policy. Okay, so this is the findings. So we can see that the recycling rate of the solid waste in Australia has increased. However, the increase was not significant. So the first conclusion is the national policy effectiveness is not significant. And then the next stage, we're trying to use the multivariate test and using solid waste recycling rate as the variable to see if the recycling rate and policy types have a significant impact. And the answer yes. If you consider all these policies, yes, you put them together, yes, the policy has certain impact on the recycling rate. But which policy has a certain impact on the recycling rate, we don't know. So we then we repeat the measurement analysis of variance of the recycling rate over the 5 years, and particularly the impacts of the solid waste on the solid waste recycling rate and the policy types. So the regions implementing different policies actually vary quite significantly from one to the other, and by means of a recycling rate. So which means the differences in effectiveness between policies are quite significant. So next we need to really separate the policy impacts on recycling rates after removal of significant covariance. And this is the result. As you can see, after removing the influence of other factors, the two solid waste management policies play a quite significant role to promote the local waste recycling rate. And if when these two policies are mixed, the local recycling rate increase more significantly. And if no management policy is used, there's a negative impact on the local recycling rate. So in other words, the policy effectiveness in this order. So when you combine both policies, you'll be a lot more effective. And and if we only implement one policy, the internal hazardous waste tracking will be more effective than the landfill bans. And if we don't introduce any policy, the impact will be very negative. So in other words, we need to implement the certain solid waste policies. So what do we learn from this study? So governments should put more efforts into understanding what factors can have impact on the effectiveness of the solid waste management policies. For example, we could look at any effectiveness of publicity measures before launching related campaigns. We often have seen some of the public consultation of any public policies which has been fully launched. Uh, and in this context, it is also more important to understand before we formally introduce the new policies. We could have the kind of consultation in place to understand the awareness and also the preference in terms of specific measures in place. Um, we also found that the policies and targets are quite significant from different jurisdictions. So we really need some kind of national uniform policies, for example, the landfill ban standards or even the landfill levy. As I mentioned previously, we found some of the states previously don't have the landfill levy, which we have seen a lot of traffic sending the waste from other states that have the landfill levy. So some universal kind of the policies and standards were quite helpful to ensure that all the jurisdictions have the certain measures in place, and these measures are going to be effective. Okay, so this particular study was published in a journal called Environmental Impact Assessment Review back to 2023. The other study I'd like to report today is about assessing and improving the solid waste management policies. So this is another interesting story, as we have seen, and you probably already come across some of the media reports talking about China and the Philippines and Thailand, I believe. They're introducing the import bans, so they refuse to take the waste being sent to them. Um, technically, I wouldn't call it necessarily a waste if there's a residual value, and in particular, the material to be recovered can be used for the local manufacturing industry. So it's more a matter of whether we have the technologies and also the markets to absorb these materials, and potentially there could be a added value which can be traded back to the country sending the waste, which would be a good business for the receiving countries. But let's have a look on these waste exporting policies. So, as you can see, in Australia, 12% of the waste being exported, and with the assumption that the waste being reported are going to be recycled, because it doesn't make any sense to send this waste to overseas where it's going to be landfilled over there. So that is the assumption being made. We're going to have a look on whether or not that's the case according to the data. So basically, we want to look at where does the exported recycled waste go, and why they are transported there, and are they really recycled? So we have quite different type of waste being exported from Australia, such as glass, metal, paper, plastic, toys, and other waste. So, and if we look at the existing studies, they generally suggested there are some factors may affect the decisions of where we're going to send to overseas. The first one is probably economic type of factors, such as the the differences in terms of economic development, such as GDP or PPP, the purchasing power, and also the manufacturing value to be added in the receiving countries. The others probably related to social, such as unemployment rate, labor intensity, and the employment rate, whereas also the environment factors such as carbon emissions per unit of recycling in waste receiving countries. So what we did is we used the data provided by the government. So there's a database provided the government for every single record of the waste being traded to overseas. So the method we use is called Space Center of Gravity Transfer Curve, which is being used to analyze variations of where we exporting for different kind of waste. And then we use the spatial divergence correlation to understand the relationship between the amount of the waste being exported and those factors we just talked about, when it has been sended. Then we use the multiple linear regression model to investigate what factors may affect the decision of the waste being exported from Australia. So, as we can see in this diagram, there are all sorts of different type of materials or waste being exported. However, as you can see, a large proportion of them goes to metal uh, and also paper. If you combine these two, that's probably 90%. Yeah, probably 90%, over 90% of the waste being exported are fall into these two categories. So, so as we can tell, the recycling rate is quite different, quite different. If we look at the metal, is not bad. It's 60%, but the paper-wise also can be as high as 90%, while as tires can be used for different purposes, such as the crumps and also the carbon black, etc. So, as we can tell, there are so many radio reports talking about these waste bans. And if you look at the recycling rate in other countries, Indonesia, the plastic recycling rate is only 11%. Whereas in China, the tire landfill rate is 10%. The recycling rate of plastic is 22%. So it's really need some attention. When we send this to overseas, whether it's going to end up with recycling plant rather than going to the landfill. So our result shows that metal has the largest export amount. And most of the metal being exported to South Asia and Vietnam, particularly Vietnam. And the major importing countries have shown a geographical shift towards northwest in recent years. Indonesia and China are the major receivers of paper waste from Australia, but the export is generally shifting towards the waste. So, and the waste paper exports are not currently affected by policies of any importing country. Malaysia, China, Turkey, Indonesia, and Spain are main receivers of the plastic, whereas the India and China have reduced the amount of importing waste plastics. So again, the geometric focus of the exported plastics destination have shifted to the west. So I probably won't go over every single slide because they're pretty similar kind of findings. But generally speaking, we use these spatial methods to be able to identify the movement of the waste, and particularly we're looking at the potential impacts of the factors, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later. So the step two, we used GWR and OLS models to look at all the five different types of waste, and particularly if this it varies quite significantly. So as you can see, both models show the same for the different type of waste, and the geographically weighted migration does not play a significant role. So the step two, overall, the destination of Australian waste export is shifting towards west. India, Indonesia, and Malaysia are the main waste in receivers. However, there was no significant difference in the policy between these receiving countries. So that leads to the next question. Why does more waste get transported to these countries? Is that because of social or environmental or economic factors? So, so we run the analysis, different models. As you can see, the plastics receive more waste metal from Australia, have a large gap with economic development level of Australia, a low level of local manufacturing development, and low local labor intensity. So the potential reason is these countries require a large amount of metal for urban infrastructure and building construction, so they do have a need of receiving this waste and recover the materials, and then can be put back into the local development activities. And I like to use waste, probably another example that don't normally been exported to the countries with good manufacturing development and high labor intensity. So in other words, this waste paper is more likely to be sent to the countries with very high recycling capacity. So, well, we probably can draw a conclusion that the environmental impact of the recycling process is not necessarily being taken full consideration when we decide where we're going to send it to. So, in other words, in the future planning or policies, we could encourage the businesses to consider these environmental issues before they make the decision. So I won't go further on this analysis, but it's very similar kind of context in terms of analysis. But for the plastics, the common factors will have very limited impact on the exports. So which means this model probably we have to expand it to include more factors so that we can identify the factors that may affect the choice of the exporting destinations. So, in conclusion, in Australia, the waste has been exported more to the countries with low level economic development. Social factors, there are three of them, but the impacts on the waste varies from one type of material to another. For some waste, the relationship between the quantity exported and the environmental impact was negative. So in other words, we need to pay more attention for these issues when we really look at the transnational waste recycling systems. So that's pretty much what I'm going to report today, and welcome questions and more opportunities to discuss. Maybe not necessarily just these two studies, but maybe in general, how to make our planet a bit more sustainable. Thank you. Back to you, Professor Yu.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Zhou, for your sharing. Yeah, we do have a received question from the audience. Yeah, so the first one is based on your research, what kinds of studies are most needed to inform evidence-based policymaking in solid waste management? And could this be suitable for journal publication?
Well, thank you, Professor Yu. That's a very good question. I think it's a good topic, evidence-based policy. As I mentioned in the second case study, when we are looking at the exporting of the waste, solid waste, we made the assumption that when this waste being exported, it's going to be recycled. But if you look at the data, in the destination, even the recycling rate of the domestic waste It's not 100%. How are we going to ensure this waste will be exported, will be recycled over there? So I think it's absolutely important topic to draw the evidence-based policy, but it's easy to be said than to be done, as the challenges are what we're going to find the evidence, and B, how much evidence will be enough. The evidence, and in Australia in particular, for example, we have a system where every state and territory have their own policy. Every state and territory have their own legislation power. It's not necessarily the case in other countries, but in Australia, for example, it's such complicated so that I mean even the land levy could um, um have certain impact of the movement of waste, even internally in Australia, from one state to the other. So this evidence, I think, will have to draw not just from one source of the information, but also, I guess, from different stakeholders, and probably need a connected, probably in few years' time, rather than just the one off. Probably looking at more temporary and spatially will be quite useful. And I'm pretty sure this kind of study will be worthwhile, will be very welcome to be published in journals, and I'm pretty sure will be attracting a lot of attention. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Professor Zuo, for your insightful comments. Yeah, for this also, if you are interested in publish, please consider our journal, right? Yeah. The
Absolutely,
second,
absolutely.
yeah, the second question is, what specific policy tools in Australia have proven most effective in promoting sustainable solid waste management in the construction sector?
Oh, uh, in
Yeah,
construction sector, I would say, because Australia is very decentralized or deregulated, so the policy is not really about mandating. There are some policies have the mandating targets, such as the this national construction code, talking about the minimum standard of, say, energy efficiency, for example. But they don't have at this stage, they don't have the minimum standard for the waste minimization. So there are voluntary tools such as Green Star, the green building tools developed by the Green Building Council Australia. What I've seen the more efficient policy, and the policy can be very broad. It's not necessarily government policies. I mean, we have seen more market-driven kind of measures will become more effective. I mean, for example, some we've seen some of the cases where the clients found it's very important for them to demonstrate the waste. Well, waste would be one of them, but generally speaking, the sustainability performance of the buildings they develop, for example, and then as a result, they found that it's more possible for them to attract premium tenants. So when they have the commercial buildings, the some of tenants want to come in actually pay more premium because they demonstrate the benefits in terms of the ongoing benefits for the energy savings, efficiency, water saving, etc. But also the potentially long term, it could be a zero carbon or zero waste buildings, which they found it to be more easier to get more tenants in place. So I guess what I'm trying to say, well, and then I guess it varies from one country to the other. But in Australia, I found that those kind of market-driven strategies or measures have shown more effectively. But as I said, it's may not necessarily the case in other countries. But this is my experience in Australia.
yeah, yeah. Thank you, Professor Zuo, for your comments. Yeah. And meantime, we also welcome like audience to to propose your questions. So you may either share your question in the chat box, or you can, if you want to speak, actually you can raise your hand and wait for the moderator to invite you, right? Yeah. So actually, personally, I also want to ask a question. Yeah, actually,
Sure.
I'm quite interested in your last case study. which is about
Yep.
like how Australia export the waste to other countries. So I'm
Yep.
wondering, that such like uh, waste exporting to other countries can help in total reduce the increase the waste recycling rate, or
Mm,
actually it does not help with like increasing the rate.
mm. Uh, I think this is very complex.
Yeah.
It's not just A or B. I hope it's black or white, but it's not.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
What happened is if you look at that what before China introduced the ban, um, many countries, including Australia, have sent a lot of waste to many Asian countries, including China. There are different reasons. The first reason is economic. It's
Yeah.
cheaper. It's cheaper to send overseas and then to be produced to be treated here in locally. Because of labor, it's cheaper. The industry is more mature, which means they have all these probably scaled up, to be able to be more economic. Um, and the other reason is probably and it's pretty arguably because close related to the first reason is there's no market over there in Australia. I mean, for example, because Australia has certain manufacturing capacity, but we have seen a lot of goods being manufactured elsewhere. So, I mean, for example, if you say we want to set up the plants to have the capacity to deal with the textile waste, like the fashion, the clothing, the bags. Yeah, sure. I don't think it's a big deal. Probably put the $20 million in, and we can have the capacity. And we do use a lot of we are a big consumer of
Uh-huh.
the textile, but we don't have the capacity to manufacture this textile. Most of these textile products are produced from elsewhere. So if there's no local capacity in terms of remanufacturing, so we end up with sending this to overseas again, and then it depends on and then we have a look at the competitiveness of these materials being recovered.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, often we heard a story like, for example, we can do the glass recycling. That's easy, as nuts. That you can just crush it and just put in and just melt it, and then you put the mold again, and you can make glasses. That's not big deal, but uh, it is cheaper to import from Malaysia, for example.
Yeah.
And from business point of view, why should we do? I mean, this is not me, but I mean, from the business point of view, why should they, um, recycle and then produce the glass again if there's no market, if the customers don't want to buy because they can buy something cheaper elsewhere. So I guess it's such a complicated matter. I'm not advocating for like just sending for just passing on the problem to other countries. That's why this study actually identified the issue that we are making assumption which is not necessarily the case. And when we found that use this data and we found when the materials waste has been exported to overseas, it's not necessarily the environmentally has been better off.
Mm-hmm.
So all these have been, I think, should be considered by the businesses and governments in terms of what in the future what the destination need to be considered. Having said that, the government has a certain regulation in terms of hazardous waste and also unsorted waste. But
Mm-hmm.
if they are not hazardous and if they are not unsorted, the government does not have a lot of control. So it's probably more, like I mentioned, it's more deregulated. Like the businesses they have to have their self motivation, and they need to be aware that when they are doing this, it actually cause more environmental issues elsewhere rather than more benefits. But again, back to your very first question, that evidence, that we need
Mm-hmm.
more evidence,
Yeah.
as the data is not enough to draw a broader conclusion.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Professor Zhou, for answering my questions. Yeah.
Thanks.
Due to like time limits, we actually cannot allow for more questions. Yeah. So thank you, Professor, again for your sharing today. And also, I'd like to thank all of the audience for your time in participating in our discussion. So thank you, everyone. So have a good day. Thanks. Yeah.
Thanks for the and thanks for the journal. And all
Yeah.
the best, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Bye. Bye.